All right, welcome back into the One Giant podcast, coming to you live on YouTube, providing you with an update. If you follow us on other platforms, you may have seen this information elsewhere. But as we start to ramp up our YouTube content, we just want to try to offer as much as we can here as we start to kind of figure out what specifically we'll be providing on YouTube versus on Sportscaster versus on the podcast. But that being said, we figured definitely worthwhile to come in here and just highlight that the Giants have picked up the options fifth year for both Evan Engram and Jabril Peppers. Now, specifically what I wanted to get into and didn't cover this on Sportscaster is the dollar amounts that this actually adds up for. So Ingram's option for the fifth year is going to cost the Giants just over $6 million for 2021. From a value perspective, this is tremendous because we just highlighted recently the Austin Hooper contract that he's signing for free agency, $10.5 million a year. So if you're looking at the Giants and you're saying, even if ultimately you're not going to bring him back on a long-term contract, from a cap hit standpoint, you've given yourself tremendous flexibility because you're really talking about, with the increased cap most likely, going into 2021, a player like Engram, if healthy, is going to be north of 11, maybe even $12 million. So you're talking about getting half price value on his fifth-year option. If he can come in and be healthy for the next 2 years, then I think you're really you can really get excited about the fact that he could be a weapon utilized in this offense. And then whatever happens after that, I think you can live with. And again, if he leaves in free agency after 2 healthy years, the compensatory prospect is going to be very nice for the Giants potentially. The other player that we're talking about as well is, of course, Jabril Peppers. And this is a guy who obviously came in via trade with the Cleveland Browns. When we sent over Odell Beckham, we sent over Olivier Vernon. We got back draft assets. We got back a starting right guard in Zeitler. We also got back our starting safety in Jabril Peppers. Now, the interesting thing here is if he were to be awarded the safety price tag, then his fifth-year option comes in at around $7 million. If it goes with the linebacker figure, then you're talking about north just over $10 million a year. Now, in that 2017 draft, these are two players that were taken nearly back-to-back, 23rd overall for the Giants to select Evan Engram, 25th where the Browns took Jabril Peppers. Now, we did highlight this. Evan Engram, before he went down with the injury, he had 44 catches, 467 yards, and 3 touchdowns in just 8 games. Now, so you want to always talk about this. This is where people go, right? The projection of what he could be for you. That would have been a 88 reception season for over 900 yards and arguably, maybe 6, 7 touchdowns on the year. That's the tantalizing piece for the New York Football Giants. But he has missed 14 games due to injury in the first 3 seasons. So you are talking about a guy that averages nearly 5 missed games a year. So the difficulty about wanting to sign into a long-term contract is obviously one that makes it tricky. As we were highlighting there, Peppers, drafted 25th overall, comes back in that trade for Odell Beckham with Cleveland, and he produced 76 tackles and returned 1 interception for a touchdown prior to suffering his season-ending injury, which was a fractured transverse process to his it didn't list what the exact one was there. So it's ending his 2019 season. But the hard part about for Peppers here, and we highlighted this on Sportscaster, here's the issue that you run into, I think. Issue may be a bit of a harsh word, but you pick up the option on him. If it's for the $7 million, you feel pretty good about it. But are you going to sign him long-term beyond that as well? I think you still get value, and you talk about, you had signed Beckham to that longer-term deal, but ultimately, you'd rather have someone pick up the tab, and you're happy that Cleveland is the one to do so. Likewise for Landon Collins, right? Long-term deal. You weren't looking to pay him north of 12, 13. I can't remember what the exact number is. We can try to pull that up here in real time for Landon Collins and see what he ended up signing for, and the reason why the Giants probably wanted to move on from it. There you go. Washington signed him to an $84 million deal. That's a $15 million signing bonus and a $6 million option bonus in 2020. In all, it'll be a $32 million fully guaranteed over the first 2 seasons, and he has a $12.5 million 2021 hit that is guaranteed for injury only. So you see how it is, right? Locking into $32 million over 2 years. That's $16 million a season. Obviously, maybe some options there and flexibility, the roster bonus that factors in as well. Are the Giants, for Jabril Peppers at 25 years old, going to want to lock into that type of commitment to him? And the interesting caveat is, I think if you hadn't had Xavier McKinney fall to you at the top of the second round in this past draft, and you didn't take safety as early as they did, then maybe Jabril Peppers would be in line for a long-term, relatively lucrative deal for him in a couple of seasons. However, because arguably a top 20 talent fell to you at 36, the Giants bring in Xavier McKinney, and he kind of falls to me into that Jamal Adams kind of category of, do you want to overpay for safeties at that position on the defense? Not necessarily, and not even overpay, but just big contracts. Not necessarily. But Xavier McKinney represents versatility, can play at every level, can contribute down in the box against the run, can pick up tight ends, can move into the slot at times, can line up with wide receivers, can drop back deep. So because he offers so much versatility at that position, signing him to the long-term deal a ways down the road, 4 years from now, is certainly going to be a viable option for the Giants. So you have to kind of think about it from that perspective if you are a New York Giants fan and where you want to allocate money when. Likewise for Evan Engram, you have, as we highlighted this on the Sportscaster broadcast as well, you have other players like Barkley. Daniel Jones is a few years away from needing his new contract to come around. Dexter Lawrence, Will Hernandez looking to have a strong season and what's going to be a little bit of a scheme shift potentially for the Giants this upcoming year. He's going to be in line, right? Taken in the second round. So he's in year 3. So only one more season before you're looking to extend him, and possible that the Giants would look to extend him sooner than later if he has a strong third year in the NFL. So there's going to be a lot of options that are going to happen there. And we will, whether it is on one of these platforms, we will, of course, break down some of those projections and what it's going to look like over the next 2 or 3 years, and where Gettleman or the Giants as a franchise need to think about how we're going to have to allocate money going forward here, and what could that look like in a few seasons for some of these secondary positions behind the franchise quarterback, behind a Saquon Barkley, right? How are they going to look to fill needs? How are they going to look to spend money? That being the case, we are happy to bring you a YouTube-specific update covering Evan Engram and Jabril Peppers having their fifth-year options picked up. It doesn't guarantee that Evan Engram is going to be on the roster for the fifth-year option, but it certainly does guarantee that a team who potentially could trade for him during the year would be getting a nice locked-in value, again, well below market value for what his talent level is. Obviously, the health and injury concerns will always loom there. Thank you for joining us here on our YouTube live video. We'll be checking back in with you throughout the offseason. We have some additional new and exciting content we're going to be pumping out here as well. So stay tuned for it. Spread the word. Follow us on social media at One Giant Podcast. Check out the podcast on iTunes, wherever you get your podcast fulfilled. I have been Adam Armbrecht. Thank you for checking in with us here on a Thursday afternoon. We will be back soon.